It's the idea of being unapologetically black. We live in a society now where it seems like everybody else can be and live unapologetically, but for some reason when we are that way, initially it's sometimes criticized, or there's certain things that come to mind, like you're supposed to be in complete African garb or all those types of things, and nothing wrong with any of that stuff, but it looks different for everybody.
Thanks, fire truck.
Exactly. And welcome.
And welcome to Atlanta, Georgia.
A crackhead just said something on Friday.
We can't promise you that somebody's not going to try to come in here. The door is locked.
So the way we think about it is that being unapologetically black and doubling down on it over time, though, becomes accepted. People understand it and respect it. So if you say this is a safe space, or this is a place for black people, we can tell our stories and educate others about our stories, and it's an open space where you feel comfortable. And you start thinking about how important that is, and how often do you really feel that way? And how do we now create more spaces like that? So unapologetically black that's what that means to me, as far as no chasing.
That's exactly.
And Amari, before you say yours though, I just want to follow, because we don't usually follow up on this question, but you said something though about like what makes you feel safe, like this, like. So I just want to ask you though, like, and maybe you can weigh into is like, what does make you feel safe as a black man in America?
Being around other black people. That's pretty much the only time. I mean,
I'm the same way. Yeah, it will be, when we can be in places like this, and we know that everybody has our back. We know that we don't have to have a guard up when when it's just us in the room. That's the times when we feel safe. Outside of that, it's a little difficult. You gotta watch your back. You're always looking to see what angle someone is coming from. What they really mean. How you're being perceived. All of that, and you don't have to do that when we're around us and in a safe space.
I think that's a powerful thing to recognize, honestly, like we are our own protection in a sense. And I think it's something that we don't actually recognize. When you just said that, it kind of resonated with me, like I feel safe when I'm with us. And we are constantly on the battle of trying to fight for all of these different freedoms that we know we deserve, and we sleep on the fact that we are safe and we are with each other.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful answer.
Yeah. Because that's funny, because like really usually people give answers like, yeah, it's like unapologetically black, raw, no chase, it's just black. And I'm like, dope. But then you just like, I feel like you added a little bit, another layer to it about, what makes you feel safe. Because it's funny, because as we have these conversations around public safety, investing in our communities, what does that really mean? In terms of budgets and so on and so forth, defunding the police, right? It's like we're trying to reimagine in this current time, what does it mean to actually feel safe, right? And we know that since the inception of this country, that law enforcement is not what we look to as being safe. And in reality, the crazy part about that is that most people, if you ask them what makes them feel safe, they won't even name the police.
Yeah.
They won't name the police.
No.
Yeah.
Like they will name my home, a cooked meal. They'll name my friends, my family, right? But they will go through 10 line items and still not get to the police.
The people whose job is safety.
Yeah.
To protect and serve.
And we'll think twice before we call the police.
Right.
So that's just kind of what's baked into our culture now. And so, but I think we live in Atlanta, so there are several safe places that we can go, because it's Atlanta. So we're fortunate that we're here because we can come to Zucot Gallery, or we can go to other places in the city that are for us, by us, and we can have. So there's several of those types of spaces here that I think it's unique.
It's very unique. Yes. I saw a meme running across Instagram, and it says, "Living in Atlanta is like going to the HBCU your whole life." I totally agree with that. I enjoy not having to not see unmelanated faces. If that makes sense. It's a pleasure. I feel like it's a privilege as well, because it keeps you in a state of inspiration and keeps you tapped into who we are.
Right.
Because like you said, a lot of people feel like, okay, well, you're black or African American. They like to put the African regalia on you, but we're deeper than that. We have so many different facets about us as a culture, and we're constantly learning, and I love discovering all the different things. And Atlanta is probably the only place that you can go to. You're just like, yo, we everywhere.
Yeah.
We doing everything. Like, we got this.
And I think we've been spoiled because being home, it's always been like this. Going away to school, going to Tuskegee, coming back. So I was explaining to one of my back in the day when I was still in corporate, explaining it to one of my white colleagues. We were having this conversation. I looked at him and said, well, I grew up just like you. Because I thought it was so odd that, I pretty much grew up and had an entire black experience my entire life, from elementary through college. And then corporate was the only first time, And I said, well, same with you, right? Like, you went to majority white schools your entire time.
Right.
You came work in corporate. But corporate is also majority white.
Right.
So I grew up, though, the same way you did. And he thought it was just so odd that I didn't, that didn't grow up differently. And so for us, it's funny. It's almost the idea though that it becomes odd when you have similar upbringings. Whether it's like our parents are professionals, we grew up in black communities, and it's literally just the reverse. And how that process is, it's almost like, well, because we're so conditioned to have their stuff everywhere, all the way around us, all the time, that sometimes it's not even understood.
Yes.
That, or like, how can you exist without us being around? And so it's a pretty interesting thing when you think about it from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity to live in a lot of different places. I lived in Europe for a while. I lived in a bunch of other cities around the U.S. And it always, in those places, it's very different from being in Atlanta. So for me, I got kind of this eye-opening. I'm like, oh, everywhere is not like this, huh? I really stand out when I'm in this place in Tennessee, or when I'm in Ohio, or when I'm in Brussels, or when I'm in Paris, or wherever, just all the different places that I've had the opportunity to live. And so it makes you really appreciate what Onaje was just talking about in terms of how we were raised, where we were brought up, the experiences that we were able to have growing up and through college and those types of things. So you really start to think back things that you probably took for granted because it was just happening because you were in the moment. You realize how special that was once you get out and you kind of see the way the rest of the world operates.
No, for sure.
So it was a no-brainer to open Zucot here then.
No-brainer.
So tell us, start from the beginning. When did the inception of this happen before you actually became a gallery?
So it started with Omar and I when we got out of school. Our father is an artist, Aaron Henderson, and we started. We had a conversation when we went to college. We went to school on scholarship.
Y'all both go to Tuskegee?
We both went to Tuskegee.
Word.
So did our parents.
For that parent.
Okay.
Yeah. And uncles, aunts, cousins.
Okay.
Word. I know,
Legacy Tuskegee family.
Man, one of my good friends down in New Orleans, he has a big old wing establishment now. He's a Tuskegee man.
Oh yeah, okay.
I don't know if y'all ever heard of Weedats down in New Orleans.
I've seen.
I've seen some stuff online about it.
Yeah, so Tuskegee guy, man. So
All right, I didn't know that. Okay, all right, cool.
We everywhere.
Yeah. Just like Tougaloo on the low. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which we've seen a lot of lately, which has been cool. Yeah.
We so like for us, got our scholarships. That's when my father decided to leave corporate, and so he left corporate to do the art business full time, and he was traveling, doing shows, all that kind of stuff.
He was an engineer as well. He was working as a full-time engineer.
And y'all are engineers.
And we're engineers, so he was so.
Our mom was the only one who's not the engineer in the family.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not really, because then you got family where it's all doctors.
Yeah,
Like, all
exactly.
lawyers, right? Y'all just happen to be
Yeah, we just
engineers.
happen to be engineers, and then so when he left, he he decided that he was going to leave corporate America when we got scholarships. He's like, hey, you guys got scholarships, I don't have to pay for school.
I'm about to do what I want to do.
Damn. So he was out here looking for y'all, and he was like, so now y'all good. I'm out, and I'm about to live out my dream.
He invested right.
Exactly. Yeah. And he didn't paint it the entire time. Like growing up, we would go, so I was painting the garage was a studio. Like we never parked a car in the garage.
I've never seen a car in it.
So he paints in the garage, so that's the studio. And then Omar and I had the conversation once I got out of school. Omar, you were in Tennessee or you were in Tennessee at the time?
I think so, yeah.
We had a call and it was like, look, we need to take over the business side for Dad. And so I was here, and so that's what we did. And so what we would do is we use our corporate dollars to start renting out gallery spaces around the city. And so we'd be like, look, can we just get the gallery, your gallery, I need you to take all the artwork down. Can you give it to us for X amount of dollars for less than a week, honestly. A lot of times we need 3 or 4 days to give us the gallery. But what we were doing is we would then do exhibitions with our father and his counterparts, his friends in our business. And so we started doing exhibitions. The thing about it was no one was looking at anybody our age to collect work.
When did y'all get started?
We were in the early 20s.
I was,
wow.
I was 23 or March 26. Like,
Young boys.
So there's nobody our age, especially black in our age, doing what we were trying to do.
And galleries will play. If you want to go try to buy something, they play. But here it is, we're engineers. We got money. We had houses and everything else. But you go into a gallery, nobody will speak to you. You asking about artwork. It's all this runaround. So
microaggression will be rolled to a gallery.
Exactly.
So they judge it.
Exactly.
So we profile with.
Exactly.
Do you know what
art
art
collection.
is? First of all, like I want to know what that person looks like, because I would tell you that most people who know art don't look like art collectors.
Right. Exactly.
They walk around and appreciate life differently than people that walk around thinking that because of what you wear, how you.
That's
you know what I mean? It's a different kind of vibe.
Yeah. And it's people of all ages too. And so we wanted to change that experience. So as we would have these conversations like what Najee was saying with these galleries around the city and say, hey, can you take what you have down and allow us to bring in what we have for a few days, for a weekend or something like that. And we do an opening and we get all these people to come. We were calling our friends, we were just calling people we knew. We said, hey, we're gonna have an art show. Let's create this experience and bring people in and let's talk about art. And that's how we started.
Our friends, engineers, all our friends are from college.
Your friends came through.
Yeah, they started buying work.
So now you got this whole new base of collectors that are in their early 20s, mid 20s, and it's like, and this is who no one else was talking to at the time. But also we started doing this education piece called that we do now, even called art tastings, where we talk about collecting, how to collect, why to collect, but
that's
not what
dope.
to collect. And we were doing those in people's homes.
Yeah,
like
so you having like a birthday party or whatever at your house, we come up as a part of that and we talk about collecting art. And then when we finish, you go back to doing whatever you were doing, but we get our message out. 'Cause we didn't have a space, so we had to go to the people.
So rule number one to
Kind of
collecting
like
art is
missionaries.
Buy what you like.
buy what you like. Rule number one.
Yep, it's buy what you like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just saw a Netflix documentary on it's the era of the abstract, right? The 1950s and 60s or whatever, Pollux and so on and so forth. And there was a counterfeiter, right? Asian guy, Chinaman, had he really didn't. I don't think he really understood what he was doing or what was happening outside of him forging the art pieces of art. But the Renfro and like Pollock and all these other artists that was in that period, they would give, I don't know if y'all saw it, but they were giving, he was selling it to pennies on a dollar to these two people that were a couple, and then they go out and was selling it for millions of dollars and convinced, now going back to a look, right? So they were, it's funny how the white woman who was a curator, lead director, curator at the famous New York City is shut down now ever since they got sued back in 2017. Well, anyway, long and short is she was talking about the profile of this woman. Her name was she was a Hispanic woman, and she's like, yeah, very unassuming. Kind of like the way she explained it to her. And so I'm like, she's profiling this woman. What she's saying is like, she didn't criminalize her, right?
No.
Right? She didn't do what happens to black folk. If a black person walked in and said, I have a Pollock, it would have went through the test you would even never, first of all, you wouldn't have got to a test.
Right.
Yeah.
But all the different, what is it called? Like the, starts with V.
Some of the verification, authentication of it.
Yeah. It's a process you go through. They went all this process, and it was like, and it was so convinced that this person had all these Pollocks and different like abstract artists from that time period that they got in like $80 million worth of paintings that they auctioned off. Through this
Biggest
period.
scams ever.
Yeah.
$80 million, bro. $80 million.
I didn't see that on Netflix. I need to go and look at that. I didn't see
No, it's crazy. I was like $80 million with the forge, and even after all that, the director, the head curator, right, for that gallery, is still like, yeah, I still believe that. I was like, what? It was crazy.
Yeah. So we say buy what you like, but then kind of 1A or 1B is like you have to make sure you're buying it from a reputable place, like a reputable gallery or reputable artist, and you want to make sure you get the paperwork for the art. So the paperwork is called a provenance, and a provenance.
That's it. I said B.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about. Okay, yeah.
Provenance.
So the provenance is like the birth certificate of the painting.
Right.
So it'll show when it was created, the artist who created it, the materials that are involved, all of that is what's in the provenance. So that's really your certificate of authenticity of that piece.
So a piece without that is what?
So a piece without that is, it doesn't mean that you don't have anything, that the piece is not worth anything. It's just that you should have something. You should have that paperwork. And if you don't have it, you can make some calls and see if that artist or that gallery can create one for you. And if they won't, you can create one yourself.
And you can begin to provenance.
And you can begin to create that provenance.
Because that's what I saw in the documentary.
Yeah.
The reason why it's so important though is the fact that like if you think about somebody, let's say you have a Picasso, right? Yeah. Okay. So Picasso did a lot of that. Picasso gave art away, but at this point his estate is the only ones who validate and verify whether you have a real Picasso or not. So if you used to have a Picasso, Picasso himself gave me this piece or gave my family this piece, and they look at you and say,
I've never seen that.
where the provenance? Where's the paperwork for it? If you don't have proof of that, you'd be sitting on what could be hundreds of millions of dollars.
But it don't
It
matter.
means nothing.
Yeah.
And that's why the provenance is so important.
Damn.
It literally is that's your stamp that says this is real. That's what we tell our clients to put them in their safety deposit box.
Yeah.
Paperwork, we keep a copy at the gallery as well. But it's so important for that very reason because you honestly, art outlives us. So you don't know what's going to happen with this work past us. And the collector determines value in the future. So if the right person buys the work, the next thing, imagine if, let's say, when Beyonce was a teenager, she started buying work from a particular artist.
The artist will be paid, like, well, maybe not the artist, but whoever is the collector of the said art now.
Well, it depends on what she did with that work. So then she starts donating a few pieces to museums. Who's not gonna take a piece, right? They don't
Right,
take
of
that
course.
piece. So now it's in museums. People start writing that. All of a sudden, people are like, this art is amazing. Like, you ever know artists get discovered?
Yeah.
And so what's sad right now is happening with African American artists, especially is they're beginning to get discovered in their 70s, 80s. Like these brothers and sisters have been painting forever, and all of a sudden they're discovered.
But I mean, he's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Shoots was good. Yeah.
Shoots is a phenomenal artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Same way though, but you start thinking about it, the discovery happens. We've always known who these people are. When they discover something, it's discovered.
That's always another form of redlining. I think all across the board, we talk about digital redlining now, and talking about, the digital divide and so on and so forth. It's like, all I do is anytime I see there's a diminished value, I immediately believe it's just another form of redlining, of black thought, black creativeness, black intellect, right? Black pride, whatever it is, right? Because like, for example, right, this painting behind us, this piece behind us, right? And I guarantee you, phone, y'all. But like whoever the brother that put together this amazing piece behind us that's behind y'all right now.
And you can eBay.
Like I'm pretty sure that let's say that piece is $30,000, right? I'm pretty sure that depending on who had it or it was some person, some European person that people said they did this and they got discovered or whatever, that piece would have probably been X amount of dollars, right? Even when you think about Atlanta right now, when you cross over certain parts of Atlanta and a bridge, maybe property value sinks by $100,000, right? But to me, these like superficial or artificial like red tape that we have around everything we create.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Zucot is really in a special position, is because now you all get to dictate and actually remove that red tape, so to speak, and actually ensure that whatever dollar amount that an artist puts on a particular painting or work, then that's, and so it is.
It's
And
a
you can't
tangible-
always do that though. You
Yeah,
have to
it's a
control it.
tangible type of validation versus a colonized type of validation.
We can control the whole life cycle of it. And so and it stays within our community at that point. So the artist creates it, and then we work with the artist on how to sell that work. Then we sell it to those clients, and then those clients can eventually take it to an auction, to the secondary market, and then that's the way we control the entire ecosystem of that piece.
So every time, so the provenance, then every time it's like second tier auction, whatever it is, right? Then they would communicate back to you all to update the provenance.
No. At that time, it's in the collector's hands at that point.
So when you buy a car,
So,
think about when you buy a car,
yeah.
like you don't go back to the dealership once you sell it. It's like it's the title continues to move on.
So then,
Yeah.
if I'm the collector, then the onus would be on me to finish the provenance, like as I
update it,
get
Update it and then give it to that next person.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
okay.
because they own the piece now, and so the provenance continues to move on throughout the
There's a
process.
certain level of etiquette as well, being a collector, because I wouldn't have to do it, right? But
I mean, but normally if you're gonna buy something, if it's in auction, it's gonna have documentation about where it's been
Alright,
already.
okay.
Like you're gonna have all those things. The other thing too is that's why it's so important for more of us to begin like collecting. If you think about it, from the piece that Omar's talking about, past the fact that it's crazy that we have to be told that we need to buy things that represent us and we need to have cultural things in our home, but we don't need to be told that to have other things in our house, right? So like if we always tell this story, like almost like if everything here was, let's say, was by a particular label, you pick the label, whether it be Louis Vuitton, Gucci, whatever, will we be able to keep it on the walls? People buy it like crazy based on just the name. None of the value stuff, none of the questions that we get asked all the time. It was because, oh, it's dope. Why is it dope? Because I've been told it's been dope my entire life,
that's
right?
it.
And because
It's been validated
exactly
by somebody else.
So by somebody else. So now I want it, and I will do anything to afford it. So I will do whatever I need to do to buy that piece. And it's more like what we're saying is we're not even criticizing that piece of it. What we're saying is consider this as well. So like, as you know, all
it's
the
a yes
things,
and type of vibe. Like,
exactly.
yes, that's cool like that, but also
we all like nice things. Don't get me wrong. My point though is that we need to begin to also see the value in our things, because what's happening is that we don't necessarily see the value. Then when someone else comes in our community, sees the value that we're not actually putting a price tag on at all, they buy it from us at the lowest price. Mm-hmm. They then put it in their magazines and everything else, and they turn back around and sell it right back to us. And that's what's happening with African American art right now.
Yeah, or we'll have to pay to go and see it. It'll be in a gallery, it'll be in a museum somewhere, and then we'll pay an annual fee for this museum to go and see work that was created by us that we had an opportunity to own.
That was in a basement of some HBCU before that.
Yeah, and we talk about being custodians of culture. And what we want to do is make sure that all of us can be custodians of culture through collective art. That's one way that you can do it.
Yep.
And so you own a piece of this culture for the time that you're here on this planet. You're going to only be on Earth for a certain period of time. And it's up to us to own our culture while we're here, and then pass that down to the next generation.
That's right.
All of this art is going to outlive all of us. And so because it's going to outlive us, it's going to continue to go. And it'll continue to be your great-great-grandkids to have these pieces that you're collecting today. And by then, they'll be worth millions of dollars.
That's right.
And, and it's a way that we start creating generational wealth. But going back to why you start collecting is you buy what you like.
Buy what you like.
You buy what you like, and then you get that, and then that piece that you like is going to appreciate as long as you have all the paperwork with provenance and all that stuff, and you buy it from a reputable place. I can't tell you by how much and by when it's going to appreciate, but the price that you bought it at will be the lowest price that it will ever be.
But
And so
the other
it'll
piece of that
continue to go, and then there's an intrinsic value that is associated with that as well. And so that intrinsic value will continue to resonate with your family for generations. I'm sorry.
The other piece about that too, though, is that when Omar was talking about the financial piece of it, is that the collector determines everything. And so, people always say, well, how I get an increase in value? It goes back to the idea of what are collectors doing with the work. And so we need more of us to be on boards of museums. We need more of us writing about work. We need more of us just participating in the process. Because if you think about it, if there are no black auction houses, if there's not enough black curators, not enough black writers, not enough black gallery owners, who's making the money off our what we create? And how long does it really even stay in our community before it's gone? And how do we even get an opportunity to see it? Like, where do you go to actually see pictures of yourself or images of yourself on walls? They're not necessarily in corporate spaces. Where do you go?
Yeah, it's not federal buildings, it's not corporate spaces, it's not hotels. It's it's in one of less than 70 African American owned galleries in the country.
And then we even had
Less than 70.
We're actually sitting in one right now.
Yeah. And we had collectors say stuff like, I love this piece, but I think it's too black, or I don't want to offend anybody if they come to my house. So that also shows you the grip on us in regards to, so you mean to tell me in your home, you're afraid if somebody white visits, they'll be offended in your home. Exactly. So but you have a white client come in and says, it could be called I hate whiting. A white person be like, I love it. Because the difference is that
we see that all the time.
it's the appreciation also of culture and perspective. Well, we see it almost as like, oh, this is racy. Because we have to take off this idea though that we're always on, right? Like they're always like, even in my own home, I'm wearing this mask. It's like, you take this mask off, like
Ooh, man.
Consciousness.
Yep, but we interviewed some brothers, the Black Male Project.
Yeah.
The Black Male Project, they literally bring masks with them to these like sit down dinners, and there's like this ritual ceremonial type of thing that they do with all the black men sitting at the table, and it's in part and really talking about taking off your mask.
Right.
Like, hey, you home, bro? Like, you ain't gotta
be safe here today.
You ain't gotta live like that, man. Just not right here, right? And so when you talk about that mask, I just thought immediately about that interview because it was one of the.
It's necessary.
Yeah,
It's a therapy that black people really need to practice because
we're traumatized.
we are. Every time we get a guest on the show, whether it's the beginning of the episode or the end, they always make mention of how they enjoy being able to be themselves in form of conversation. Because we do have these type of moments where we are just like, damn, let me sound better. But what is sound better? Like, however it comes out, it is what it is, and we appreciate that.
Right.
We would rather not hear a carbon copy of a conversation that we've heard so many different times. Like, give it to us the black way every time, because we don't deserve to be in this double consciousness.
Right.
We get people that come in here and tell us that all the time. I like the fact that I can come in this gallery and just be myself.
Yep.
We hear that because what we do, and this is kind of going back to the concept around the art tastings and just the experience we want to provide for people. It's one of just you feeling comfortable, like you can ask any question. We know that you didn't grow up collecting art.
Right.
Most of us didn't. So, so it's okay for you to come and like, look, I do not understand why this piece costs this much money. Yeah, you can ask that question. So when we have those art tastings, we try to demystify the whole art
that's what I was thinking in my mind.
Yeah. We just break it down. We're kind of like the guy that used to be on TV, the magician that told you how all the tricks were done. We try to do that when people come in here so they just understand it and feel comfortable. So when you come in one-on-one, we have an opportunity just to sit down and talk to you. And people feel more comfortable, and they feel like, all right, now I have the tools. Like, I'm armed with these tools now that I can be an art collector. And it's not as hard as I thought it was. And I don't need to be a billionaire to do it. So
And then we normalize the purchase.
Yeah.
So once you normalize the purchase, when I say normalize the purchase, I mean, when a client comes in and says, ooh, this piece is expensive, one or two things I'll do. I'll take them to a more expensive piece. It's like,
That's one way to do it.
So
so you understand it's relative, right?
Yeah.
Like, or secondly, for some of my clients, one in particular, I always tell the story where I looked at her and I started laughing. Why are you laughing? I said, because you have on a $4,000 handbag and you're talking about an $1,800 painting. And she looked down and she started smiling. And she says, I got 2 more of these at the house. And, you know, closet full of bags. And she's like, so once again, not saying don't do those things.
Right.
But it's amazing how in your mind it was easy for you to spend $4,000 on a bag. But when it comes to things like this, you don't. So what is it? Just recognize that you don't understand the value yet. So let us get you past
being
that.
a collector.
And let me get you over that hump. Because once you get over that hump, then now she collects all types of stuff from us now.
Yeah.
But it's the mental piece because we're taught differently. Like this is for rich white people.
Yeah,
like
no,
that's what we're
for real.
taught. Like and so it's not.
Yeah.
But if you think about it like this, the same thing, like even Gary Vee did with wine, right? You know, Gary Vaynerchuk used to be the wine guy back in the day. And he normalized wine, right? So he would have a hockey team on with him tasting wine. Like they're like, what is this? But what he did was he opened it up to the masses. Now you can buy a home for $300,000 and they'll have like a mini wine cellar downstairs. That was never the case back in the day. We've normalized it to a place where it's acceptable, people can participate. And so we're looking at it from a standpoint of how do we get in these spaces where we see ourselves, we appreciate ourselves, and we collect ourselves. And then when we do that, once we do that, we also understand the other side of this. Now that I have this in my collection, what can I do with it? Mm-hmm. And then from there, that's how we create the wealth piece that we've been speaking about as well.
This is probably the most important part, considering the generations that's coming behind us.
Right.
So now that we have this type of knowledge, we can be able to pass it on to them earlier than when we got introduced to it.
So we do field trips. We work with kids. We've had as young as 5-year-olds in here, and they ask the best questions. Yeah.
So if I was a collector, right? Not collector. If I was an artist, and I'm like, yo, Mario and Ajay, look, bro, do y'all, how can I get in your gallery? Yeah. So I would call y'all up. What is that?
The content. Yeah, don't call us.
So there's
before rule number 1, the prequel to 1, don't call. Got it. So,
don't show us your work on your phone.
Yeah.
But they for artists, what they can do is they can submit on our website, and we review the submissions. So you can go to zucotgallery.com.
Got you.
You can submit, and we're just know that we're very selective. There's a certain type of artist that we work with. We work with mid-career African-American artists. When I say mid-career, that means that they're being, for the most part, they're in a number of private collections. They're already being collected by or they are being shown in other galleries and museum collections. So they've started to build a career and make a name for themselves. They've been painting for a number of years, and they have a body of work that could fill up this gallery most of the time.
They're ready.
They're ready to go. So and that's just our niche. That's not to knock any other artists or artists that are kind of up in, that are just starting out. That's just where that's the circle that we play in. And our clients now are expecting that from us. Mm-hmm. And so when we review the work, we're looking at that. We're looking at the materials that they've used. We want to make sure that they're archival. We talked about, these things lasting for generations. Well, if you're painting with materials that won't last for generations, they're student grade, or you're painting on a piece of plywood that you found on the side of the road.
Basic acrylic paint. Like, yo, bro, what is this?
That's not archival. So we have to make sure that it's going to fit the mold of what we've created and what we created for the gallery and what our collectors expect.
That's right. And
so so we look at that, and then we look at, like, do we like this work? Is this something that we think? Do we like it? Do we think our clients will like it? Does this style resonate? What stories are they telling? Because this is a narrative gallery. So we want to make sure that the work is telling some kind of a story. Even the abstract work that we have in here tells stories. And so we want to make sure that that the artist kind of fits all those different things. So that's how we start. We look on, there are a number of artists like on social media, on IG. We'll find them. We'll go out, we'll look for artists as well. So we do the same, just like they're looking for us, we're looking for them.
Because what doesn't work here may work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now the book, before we get on out of here, man, I gotta make sure we cover this. But it's a beautiful piece, to be honest, to be on anybody's coffee table. So I want to talk a little bit about the book. and like, you know, some of y'all intentions around that and what y'all plan on doing with it.
Okay, so here is the book. I'll let Omari speak to it.
Yeah, so the book is called Fight On. It is an interpretation of the African American spirituals. And so when you think about African American spirituals, the Negro spirituals, songs like Wade in the Water, songs that we grew up singing in churches and those types of things, HBCUs sing them a lot. The choirs at HBCUs sing them all the time. So several years ago, more than 10 plus years ago, our father, who's one of the artists that we manage and have here in the gallery, he created, what he wanted to do was really create a pay homage to these slave poets that created these songs. And so these were enslaved Africans that created these songs. When he was in college at Tuskegee, he had a job, a campus job. This was in the 60s, where he had to record the campus choir. And the campus choir used to sing these songs. So he loved hearing them sing these songs. And he grew up hearing his grandmother sing them. And now he's in college and the choir singing them. And so he was telling that story to Onaje 10 plus years ago. And Onaje said, hey, you know what? We ought to do a series of paintings on that. You ought to do some paintings on that. And just telling those stories. And so he thought that was a good idea, and then he started doing research. So he spent about 3 years doing research on the spirituals and understanding where they came from. And so what he found in his research is that the people that created these songs, they were young people. They were 30 years old and younger. Most of them were teenagers.
That's right.
So enslaved Africans were not like these older people that we normally see in movies and those types of things. They were young people.
You
And
can
so,
live long as I mean, it's backbreaking work, literally, you know.
Yeah. So they were creating these songs. It's just fascinating that people who could not read and write, you could get killed if you were reading and writing, were creating these songs that had all this meaning in them. And we still sing them today.
Right.
So a lot of them were never even written down, and they survived the time. So in his research, he found out that there were 10,000 songs, and about 6,000 of them survived. So in the book, what he picked 60 of the songs and created a piece that tells the true meaning of each one of those songs.
So it's visual interpretation of the song, and the lyrics are only on one side. We also had scholars write inside the book as well. So like from historical music scholars as well write inside the book too, talking about the spirituals. And when you start thinking about this, here is somebody possibly never left a 10-mile radius. We're still singing their songs to this day, and we pay them no respect, no homage. Like we don't even talk about these people. But at the same time, it is literally the basis for all American music. Without the spirituals, you don't get gospel, you don't get rock, jazz, R&B. Nothing comes without the spirituals. Whether it be the improvisation that you see inside of it, whether it be just the way the songs are created. None of that exists without the Negro spirituals. And so, who are these people? And who are these young people? The average age for the prime slave was a 9-year-old girl. And so you start thinking about what happened to us, and we don't even want to talk about what happened to us.
Oh, Lord, real quick, did y'all see what happened to the 9-year-old girl in Rochester, New York? With the police. I want to bring it up.
Oh yeah, I did see. I saw
She
it.
was pepper sprayed.
Yeah,
Because there was like 7 police officers, 7 squad
they
cars
cuffed her
that
and
came.
everything.
And he told her, he said, stop acting like a child. She said, I am a child.
She was like, huh?
Yeah, I am a child. Yeah.
Anyway, it just made me. It's really thinking about the history of like the slave patrol
And showing that
just
it
showing the
hasn't
imagery.
changed.
And then
Yeah.
you mentioned a 9-year-old child, a 9-year-old black child, little girl. Is just like the parallels is just like crazy.
But the fact is that, and people always it always seems to be like a sad thing, but the thing we always forget is that we're the descendants of the people they could not kill. And so when you think about it from that standpoint, we gotta pay respect to these people.
People broke free.
Yeah.
So that's how we were here.
And it talks about how we fought though. Like, so we always like, so you know, when you don't really know your history, you believe all the stories you see and everything else. But there were revolts happening all over
We talked about
the
that
country.
yesterday. We
were
literally
just
had a whole
talking about
conversation yesterday at the gathering spot. Shout out to gathering spot.
Yeah, we work with it too. Art is in there.
Yeah.
From the gallery. It's in there.
And we just sat down, and we don't have time for today, man. But Sika was telling a story about her family and literally like how
Why did they have so many children? But they understood that their children were their power.
Yeah.
Period. It wasn't about, you know, it wasn't more so about making sure that they were forming a family unit. I believe that them having all of those children was more so about, okay, like the more I have, the closer I'm gonna probably get to freedom.
It's a factory too. Like, so you think about from the sharecropper standpoint, if I gotta pack this much cotton or whatever as a sharecropper. Now this is supposed to be like when we're free or whatever, but the sharecropper holds it over my head. The more people I got working out there, the more I can get. So that's why you'll see like a 5-year-old out there working, because it's like we're trying to fill these bags up, so we try to get out from under this so we can possibly one day own this land. When we don't realize it's a sliding scale, we'll never own it because they'll keep saying,
Yes.
wait until this time.
Yes, because
Yeah.
once they were free, you know, it was still like, you got these things that you have to do in order for you to have your free
It is
land
perfect.
that we done gave
Our
you.
grandfather
Yeah,
did
that's
that.
that's our same. We have the same story.
Wow.
Our grandfather, our grandparents grew up in Alabama. Same thing. They were, and he ended up leaving, like what Conscious
One of
said,
Buffalo. That's how I
moved
found
to
it.
New York
Yeah.
just because he was trying to get away from it. He's like, I'm not doing this anymore. He left.
It's like they dangled the freedom.
Yeah.
Like, okay, y'all,
Just
you've
ownership.
done enough to be
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
Do a little bit more.
Exactly.
But what you said yesterday though, it was really made me think about this whole like, you know, black folk just gotta be twice as good, gotta be perfect, right? And I think that's where this imposter syndrome kind of creeps in, because you know you can never be perfect, you can never measure up to what even a thought in your own mind, so you just don't produce sometimes. And so like when she was like saying that if everything wasn't perfect, once you got your freedom, then they'll take it away from you. It's almost like this fear, this crippling fear of like, I'm always walking on eggshells, I gotta be perfect, I'm not perfect. In some way, somehow, everything can be taken away from you.
Yeah.
And I think that thought, that notion still kind of lives inside of us to some degree. And I feel like, you know, it's being, you know, washed away by each generation.
I don't believe we're honest.
But it really still is there, and it's such a damn. When she told me that story yesterday, I was like, yo, that was
You know what happens?
powerful story.
Well, what happens is we typically see it as obvious when it comes that way. What we don't see is that in corporate spaces, it's the same thing. Like the trauma you have, like we've always been taught at the HBC. They teach you, like it's no secret that you're gonna be taught a certain way where you got to be like, look, we're gonna do it without calculators for the first 2 years.
No, for real. No, for real. Like,
So you have to be better.
You have to be better. You're told that, right? And you come out, you are better. As soon as you get to corporate, you're told you're not better.
my man
Because you went to that HBC.
My math teacher was a brother from I think either Ghana or Nigeria, and my freshman year, I pulled out my little TI, whatever, and he was like, everybody pull out their calculators. And literally, like for the first month or so of school, he was like, no calculators. First test, no calculator. I'm like, hold on, time out, man. Like, I'm gonna need my calculator at some point. He was like, I'm gonna show you every step on how you can solve every single problem before your calculator.
Yeah.
And then when y'all got that, then you could use your calculator. I was like, come on.
We have professors throwing chalk at you.
Man, we're walking around like, you know, and this is in the 90s, going to engineering school, and we got T-squares and stuff, and we're walking around still drawing out like when you
got all
it could all be digital right now if we wanted it to. So we're, you know, so that does it kind of what they're doing is they're telling you that, hey, you have to be better than everybody else, so we're gonna make you better. But then when you get in that corporate space, nobody thinks, but they don't believe that you're better. So you end up proving yourself again. So you almost start over with this, I have to prove myself again. I have to be better than everybody else. And so you're walking on eggshells. Back to your analogy, you're walking on eggshells again. And now you're trying to figure out how I'm going to navigate this system. And so it's baked into our culture. It's just kind of, it's really who we are, and we have to start to break out of that and realize that it's okay to be who we are in our own skin at any given in time.
Absolutely.
And it starts with us just continuing to tell it from generation to generation. It's got to get better, and we have to make it better.
Yeah. Ooh.
That's what Black Without Texas means. That.
That was a good Black Without Texas. That was great, man. Well, nah, man. So I just want to say, like, on behalf of the Black Lunch Break, me and Sika, and all like Black Infiltration, the whole entire family and network, man. Thank y'all for one, like, just come up in here and just see the space, view the space, but probably even more importantly, man, see the people behind this amazing space and everything y'all been doing, starting with your pops and the people before your pops, and really just like, you know, sharing some knowledge. I learned a lot today. I don't know about C, but I learned a lot about just even becoming a collector, right? I didn't know the first rule, to be honest. Recap this a bit, was just buy what you like. I thought I could buy some expensive piece with everybody's name that's gonna be dope, and then go, yeah, like this
let me go find me a
right?
Picasso.
Yeah, and it's like, well, no, actually, you go buy what you like. Like, all right, well, now I feel almost like maybe
That's a whole like, that's a key that they just gave us. Because think about it, we're losing the value because of the fact that we're going out there thinking that we need to go buy said art piece.
And who's saying it? And think about who's the one telling you.
Who's telling you?
Yeah. They've already bought it.
So if we just pay attention to it, yo, I like this piece of art from this Black person. I'm gonna invest my energy into knowing that I love this piece. I'm gonna put other people onto this artist, and boom, everything is elevated.
That's the power of the collector right there. That's what you just said. Was like, I'm gonna buy this piece. I'm gonna put these other people onto this piece. I'm gonna take it to the secondary market. That's
right.
all that the collector's saying. That's how it works.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful stuff I got here, man.
Appreciate
Thank you so
it.
much, man.
Thanks for coming. And big shout out to Troy.
Yes, Troy. Troy.
Next time we come down, man, Troy, we're gonna put you on one-on-one. That's just us, right? Nah, man, but thank y'all again so much for allowing us to be in this space, man. It's beautiful. And now I have more insight on the book because I felt like I got the book, I flipped through it like you would do any copy, you know, just somebody send you a book. But now it's like, I'm about to go dig into this book a bit more. Because after the story after what you just told me, I'm like, oh, man, 'cause I'm a history person. I love our history, and I think it's super important to really have that. So yeah, man.
But for it to be like 10,000 songs and then like only a record of 6,000, it just goes to show like how much we don't know.
Yeah.
And we're out here like learning all this other stuff. And it's like, yo, we kind of need to go back and finish learning the rest of the lost files that has happened.
Facts.
When we spoke to Kramer Wimberly, he's a part of the Enslaved documentary from Samuel L. Jackson, and he was speaking on how they were diving and going to find all of these different artifacts from the sunken slave ships, and he was like very adamant about us as a community learning about everything that is lost and not being so concerned with what they are telling us we need to be learning. He was like, it's too much stuff out there that we have not yet discovered.
Exactly.
Too much facts that we need to be tapping in as much as we can and get all of that. Forget what they talking about.
I mean, you know, Troy always brings a point, or this is part of Troy always brings a point, like, they're still fighting over artwork from World War II, right? You think about it, they're still fighting over, you know, what happened in Europe, like with the Nazis and Jewish artwork. They're still fighting on it in court, in litigation right now. So if you think about the artifacts that were lost, those things that we have, our stories, all those types of things that were stolen from us. But we don't recognize what we have or what we had, because a lot of us refuse to actually look at, like, we'll say stuff like, I hate hearing about slavery. We're more than that now. Well, yeah, that's all well and good, but we don't actually know the truth what happened to us.
We don't.
And it's part of American history.
We know it's the backbone, the base of American history. We built the country.
Yeah, we don't, nobody says like, another Holocaust movie.
Yeah, they never want you to forget it.
They don't want you to forget it.
Right.
They literally say hashtag never forget. That is the whole messaging component around the Holocaust.
Exactly. And it's so important, right? So in the same regard, it's just as important that we understand where we come from, who we came from, and don't let those people and what they did, the chances they took, the lives that were lost, go in vain.
True.
Yeah.
Thank y'all, brothers.
Thank you.
Thank y'all,
Thanks for
man.
coming.
This is truly a blessing to be here, man. Being y'all presence for real, man.
Great.
It's dope. So, anyway, see, you want to do this this outro? We're gonna do an outro right here. Speaking to the camera, sis. Come on, stop playing.
You guys, we just had a wonderful interview here at the Zucot Gallery. We want you guys to make sure that you check them out, follow them on all social media networks, and of course you got to check out the website, right? We got some great things that's going on here in Atlanta, and Fight On is a book that you guys should definitely add to your collection. Not only add to your collection, but put that thing on the coffee table. It's worthy. It's more than
It's
worthy.
on my coffee table.
Yes, I got to get one for my coffee table. But until then, thank you guys for tapping in with the Black Lunch Break, where we think black.
Live black.
Unapologetically.
We out.
Bet.
Yeah, sue me, I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo, look.
Let me see your chest.
Wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble. Yeah. Wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble. Yeah. Wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble. Yeah. Wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble.
This is a human condition, right? This is a human suffering that we're seeing in Portsmouth, in Greene County, in SNCI, in Wilkinson County, all throughout this state, y'all. We've been focusing on Portsmouth, but we cannot forget about all the rest of our brothers and sisters throughout. Do we understand that?
Unapologetically black. I'm black, capital A, capital F. I love black women. Hennessy, black with no chaser.
What comes to mind is no cut cards. We're not holding back anything as black people, regardless of whatever the struggles, regardless of whatever pain, everything that we pretty much felt in 2020. Black with no chaser represents we not holding nothing back 2021. Everything they said we couldn't get, we coming to get.
Really appreciate y'all. This has been one of the most amazing interviews I've ever done.